So let me, you can read who the people, the wonderful people are with me here on stage. But let me just first ask you, aside from the two-liners that we have here, can you tell us about yourself, what you do, and where you locate yourself in these three themes? Imanya, you want to go first?
Okay. So thank you very much. My name is Imanya, as if, you know. I feel like this is like everywhere I go, so Imanya said, Imanya said, Imanya said. I'm like, oh my God. In terms of the three things, the competing priorities of faith, work, and family, I belong to all three. I work full-time for in corporate Australia. I am a full-time single parent, and I also am one of the co-chairs of a faith-based organization, an interfaith-based organization in Johannesburg. So as if that's not enough time, there's not enough hours in the world, I also moonlight as a gladiator for ILGA and a warrior for the International Trans Fund. So there's a lot of human rights work that I do, but I also work really long hours, and my children are kind of like suffering as a result of that. So I'm very familiar with this area of like trying to balance your life, your working commitments, and also your faith. Yeah. I'm going to tell you a very brief story. My son went to see his paternal grandmother in the Philippines, because my children are half Filipino. Oh my God, in summer last year. 19-year-old, and he came back with a tattoo, a massive tattoo covering the arm. And I was like, what the hell is that? And it was like a clock and a rose. And this is a turning point for me. Because I asked him and I said, what the hell does it mean? And he said, oh, don't worry, Mum, I got it for you. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, the rose is for you, obviously, but the clock is to remind me of how little time you spend with us because you're off saving the world. Oh, like whatever's left of my heart, I felt like, I said, oh, that's so special, but meanwhile, I was bleeding everywhere because I was thinking, good one, Conrad, good one. So fast forward to this year. In February, we started the process for due diligence for a merger and acquisition by another company who's taken over our company. And I opted to jump off the bus. I said, this is my bus stop. I decided, based on what my son had told me, that the clock reminded him of me and what little time we had, that I was going to stop working. So we've moved up to Brisbane. We found a house in Brisbane, in Brassel, in Ipswich, in Pauline Hanson territory, God forbid. And I've moved my two children up there, so I'm trying to balance trying to finish my job in Sydney, which finishes at the end of September, and then I'll be full-time an activist and a full-time mother and probably a part-time driver for Uber, so we can pay our bills. So, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. I think the things that I wanted to share is like, it's really about work and rest. That's what my faith tells me. That's what the Bible commands of us, in the commandments, is that we need to find time to work. We need to find time to rest. And you need to make time for your family. No matter what, no matter how tired you are, make time for your family. My 19-year-old goes out with his mates, and no matter how tired I am, and I get home at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, and by the time I'm asleep, it's midnight. By 4 a.m., I have an alarm, and I wake up, because it's the weekend, and they're out with his friends, and I want to be there when the phone call comes that, Mum, pick us up from somewhere, or Mum, I don't know where we are, come pick us up. It's that part of you being a parent that you need to be, to be present in your children's life. No matter how tired you are, you'll drag yourself out of bed, you'll swear your head off, but you'll get in that car and you'll go and get your kid. Because, he needs you. It doesn't matter if he's drunk or he's drunk with his mates, you just gotta go and get your kid. You need to have some outside interests. I'm lucky that I have outside interests as a human rights activist, and that helps balance or keep me sane. 54 years old now. For the last 20 years, I've worked in a corporation, and I'm going to devote my time to being a full-time parent. I wanted to share one more thing. There's a Bible passage that's really important to me. That it's a poster that I have hanging in my bedroom, and it's from Matthew 6, verse 24. And this is important to me and also to the Tiara herself, because, you know, we're raised in the Christian faith in Samoa. And Jesus says, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. And that's a really, really profound statement for me as the co-chair of the Global Interfaith Network based in South Africa. You cannot serve God and money. It has to be one or the other. So, you know, I'm happy I've made some good decisions regarding my human rights work. And, you know, it's like, you know, look, Matthew 6:33 says, you know, our Heavenly Father already knows perfectly well what you need. He knows what I need. I just need a, you know, a comfortable house with my children so I can bake cookies and try to be a grandmother if God helps me. And He will give it to you, you know, if you give Him first a place in your life. So, and that's really important for me. It's like, you know, my Christian faith, my work, and my life as a parent is, you know, so I'm sorry I took up a lot
it's
of your
fine.
time. So,
You've been quoting the Bible. I felt my collar twitch. Like, my
sorry,
goodness.
Reverend.
Okay. Thank you, Emmanuel.
Good afternoon. So I'm Jason Masters, and I realised it was today's 35 months since I first told somebody of my sexual orientation after being married for 20 years. So I've become. I wrote my Christmas card later this year and talked about how I've become an accidental activist in this movement. As I've started this journey, I suppose before I accepted my sexuality, I've always been interested in social justice and was very involved in social justice activities in the Uniting Church. I've had a full-on corporate and professional career, and I've got 2 kids, and so, you know, they cost a lot of money. My daughter is quite an elite athlete, and my son's doing a whole lot of interesting work at university, where he's a student, and now my daughter's at university as well. So sort of coming out brought a whole lot of complexity. So I'm kind of part of a rainbow family, but my experience is coming out in your 50s with teenage children, you actually don't connect with the rainbow family community, which is a really interesting thing. And in fact, one of the things I found was New South Wales, or Sydney, is the only city in Australia that has a government-funded program for the wives of men who come out bi or gay. There's lots of support programs for kids, but there's no program for kids in my scenario, so I found that was interesting. So fortunately, my kids have been fantastic. My son lives permanently with me, and my daughter moves between mum and I on a regular basis, so that's gone very, very well. Work-wise, I'm in what they call a portfolio of life career. So I have my own consulting business, and so that keeps me and a whole lot of people sort of working. I'm on a number of boards and government audit committees, and I'm an educator in that I do a lot of education of company directors through the Australian Institute of Company Directors. So for me coming out, everything got disconnected. Struggling to work out who I am. What did it mean who I was? What does it mean I am? And what does it mean I'm going to be? And I think I'm still on that journey at this point in time. But as I've gone on, I've been able to start to reintegrate. So I've been very lucky. In fact, my psychologist who helped me work through this, one of his first questions, do you have a faith? Are you involved in any religious communities? And I said I was involved in the Uniting Church, and he moved on. And as much as he challenges me, I kind of learned very quickly to challenge him. And I said, why did you move on so quickly? And he said, you weren't at danger because you're in the Uniting Church. There might still be problems, but had you been involved in a couple of other denominations in Sydney, you would have been at serious risk. Because what we know is suicide of LGBTIQ people in very conservative religions is extremely high. It's up there at the level of transgender. So that was kind of quite interesting. So it took me a while. In fact, it was interesting. I think my faith journey was helped by the fact I stormed out of my then parish over an unrelated matter. My then wife said, I want you to go somewhere. I rang a mate and he said, go to this particular parish. And it was there that I saw LGBTIQ people who were loved by that parish. And that, to me, it was, I struggle in my relationship with God, but when I look back, I see God has put me in a place where I'm safe and I'm able to work through things. And I'm pretty confident he put me in that parish to help me deal with my sexuality and grow from there. That parish has put me as a counsellor, voted me on as a counsellor of the parish, so I'm involved in that. In my board roles, I'm on one of the senior boards of the United Church in New South Wales. And I'm not completely out, but I'm out enough that most people know where I'm at. And there was a little bit of sadness in that. I went to be the chair of the board and I didn't get it for very good reasons. I want to be very clear about that. The other candidate was better for where the organisation is at this point in time. But I was sad to hear afterwards that somebody mentioned, oh, I'm not sure if Jason should get this because of LGBTQ activism. So that was interesting. I think what has been a really interesting journey for me has been able to use my position of influence that I've had and then carry it through into the new Jason. So one of the boards I sit on is the Medical Council of New South Wales, and medical, we're a co-regulated environment in New South Wales, and to the best of my knowledge, we're the first jurisdiction in Australia that has successfully prosecuted 2 doctors for inappropriate treatment of transgender patients. And we've also had a number of parents who have complained about doctors and the treatment of their transgender children through the fact that they want the doctor to stop treating their child. And there's enough wisdom in that room to recognise what those complaints were and not to progress the complaint. So actually to reject the transgender child by actually getting the right treatment. So I've been able to do that. I've been able, through my role as an educator of up-and-coming, well, people who are company directors and who want to become company directors, to subtly use conversation. So through the marriage equality debate, talk about do corporations actually have a role in social justice issues? And so with the Margaret Court story about attacking Qantas, about getting involved in marriage equality, we're able to have conversations. So using my role to create conversation has been something I've been privileged to be in a position to now use who I am in that story. So that's kind of my story.
Hi everyone, my name is Mavon, or formerly or commonly known as Max. You came out 35 months ago, right?
Yeah.
I came out publicly 12 months ago on this platform using AFED, so it was a very personal journey for me. So my faith, which is Muslim, is very, very deep to me, and it's part of my DNA. And before that, one must understand my background. So my mom's Pakistani, and my dad's from New Zealand. And my mom is someone that wears the hijab and the whole shebang. So you can imagine growing up in a Muslim family is very challenging. And to make matters worse, I was in the British Army for about 8 years, in Afghanistan and Iraq, got the medals, which made it more difficult to accept myself and who I really am. So that's just a little bit of aspect that I wanted to plant, because it's quite important to knowing who you are before you can tell you what I've become now. For me, I was married for about 8 years. I have a beautiful son. So finally accepting who I was 12 months ago changed my life. And more importantly, telling your spouse that you're gay was a very ugly affair, as one can imagine, and it's not easy. And it's deeply personal as well, but it was something that I had to do for my son. You know, I have custody for my son now, and I could not do anything more than protect him right now. And when we did the vulnerability sharing story, you know, and the reason why I brought him up was because I feel very responsible and guarded now as a dad for that. My paying job right now is I'm a HR business partner for Coke, based in Fiji. And, you know, just throwing in the workplace conversation in there. So I was with ANZ for about 3 years and in the banking field generally for about 6. And they have a lot of challenges around rainbow families and workplace issues. So it's always been a challenge trying to be somebody that is not fitting into a pigeonhole, so to speak. I'm 5'4" midget. I'm APACI, as they call it. And home is Fiji, but I was raised in London. So there's always that aspect. But my religion has always helped me to be the person that I am. And like you said, you've been an accidental activist, so have I. Through my 2 warrior princess, and I look at Maria and Bess, and not forgetting Jack out there as well, is I've set up Vanua Tangomaki in Fiji, which literally means creating safe space for LGBTI people to sitting down and just having a conversation. And that was it. And it allowed me to find my voice. But at the same time, now that I've been barred from 2 mosques in Fiji for being who I authentically am, I've started my alternative mosque in Fiji, which is you can come as you are. Simple as that. As long as you're authentic. Thank you.
Well, I have a lot of questions, but I was wondering if any of us wanted to ask any of our... thank you for that. Thank you. Yes.
Jason and perhaps Max too, but your son might be too young. How did your children respond to your coming out?
It's very interesting. My wife kind of outed me a few months before I wanted to come out. And in fact, I could see it coming, and my psychologist and I spent time preparing for coming out. And the night it actually happened, I was saying to her, look, because my son was doing his HSC, he was year 12, and I said, I really don't want to talk about this until he's done his exams. And we batted around the topic for a while, and then my then wife basically said, so you've got a terminal illness, have you? And so I was kind of left nowhere to go but to tell her what was really happening. So we agreed we actually wouldn't say anything to the kids until after my son had finished his HSC, and we brought them into our study sort of one at a time. My son, who just turned 18, typical boy, basically didn't say anything. But his Christmas card was just, amazing when he said in his Christmas card, you'll always be my father. So that's just a special Christmas card. My daughter at the time, when we told her she was 16, and she broke down into tears because my then wife wanted us to sort of cohabitate until she'd finished her HSC. And we couldn't work out why she broke down in tears, and what she eventually said was, I actually want the 2 of you to be happy, whatever that means. And so wisdom beyond her years was just amazing. So from that point of view, I think I must be one of the luckiest sort of dads in the world. As I've explored what I saw as the missing gap in support services for kids in this scenario, kind of what I realise is probably why there's not much there, is I think for teenage kids in Australia now, divorce is so common. There is so much education about LGBTIQ people it's like, oh, my parents got divorced, I got a gay dad, oh yeah, what's next? The only group that I really concerned about, and I've seen this through a person I communicate with on Facebook, is the families that are involved in the very evangelical churches. And either two things tend to happen. The kids really, really struggle and don't get the support they need, or they just absolutely reject the father, which then creates a whole lot of other change, or the mother, whatever it may be. So that's kind of where it went for me.
For me, same with Jason, I was outed. So my then wife came home one night drunk and shook my little boy and said, "Do you know your father loves to suck cock?" And I don't know how I felt that evening, but my son turns around to asking me the question, which I couldn't explain at that time because he's 7 years old. The next morning when the conversation started, so I just told him, "Your dad just likes other guys." He was silent for about 10, 15 minutes, and he says to me, "But you're still my Abu, right?" And Abu means you're still my dad, right? And he just hugged me, and I think that that changed everything for me. So I think it was important that, to be yourself with my son, and now, that bonding is different.
Thanks. Do I still have time? Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Do we have any more questions or anything that you would like to share? Also, if you have stories similar to theirs from the floor? No? Are you sure? Yeah. Yeah, go. This one. Yeah.
Okay, now we know too. So I'm very interested in the mosque that you're starting in Fiji, and I'm wondering what sources of support and what connections and contacts you have, if you have, to help you in that process.
So starting the mosque wasn't easy because of all the internal homophobia that exists in the Muslim community. And it doesn't help when I've got an Arabic tattoo on my arm as well, because that's the biggest sin you can commit in the Islamic faith. That's why she's smiling over there in the corner. But my cousin, he's an imam, and he has been an inspirational person to work with. And last year, I was in Sydney for the first youth conference for leaders in Asia, and I managed to speak to a guy called Imam Noor, who is the first openly gay imam in Australia, and he's been helping me. So the difficulty that I have is it doesn't help when the Prime Minister of Fiji openly says that all gays can go to Iceland and die. Now, I don't know why Iceland in particular. I need to find out. But that's my biggest challenge that I have. But I do have a lot of people that are supporting it, purely because I'm not driving it from an LGBTI perspective, but purely from an authentic human rights perspective. And it's aimed for Muslims in the community, and it's growing. And thank God for social media. Sometimes you do get negative flack. People do raise eyebrows and do question. But I think that's where that storytelling piece for me helps to connect with them. Does that help? Thank you.
Thank you. The event tonight. Yes. But I did have one more question. Sorry, after this, and then I will plug. I will plug 10 times. What is the event tonight? Movie night, yes. Okay, for many LGBTQI communities, at least for my context, spirituality or faith is just too much of a bother already, you know. No matter how progressive, it's still very complicated. as people of faith, and I would assume you're people of faith, how far will you go to change your church community or the mosque that you currently have?
So for me, you owe it to yourself. It's a duty to yourself to walk away from a space that's not safe. If your religion is not supporting who you are as an LGBTI or indigenous LGBTI person of faith, walk away. I give you permission to walk away. God gives you permission to walk away. You're not in a safe space, walk away. There are, so many other churches that are offering safe spaces for our youth, alternative mosques, if you're Muslim. Like you look at, alternative churches, the Uniting Church, there are parishes within the Catholic Church that offer sanctions for Catholic, for Joey will know this in Tonga, for LGBTI Catholics of faith who need that additional support. So my only advice is find the strength to walk away from something that does not serve the divine spark inside of you. Because you are a miracle. You're a miracle of God. You owe it to Him to do what you can to serve His purpose while you're on this earth.
I'd agree with that, and I think the thing I would add from my own experience is, and I've learned this really interesting theological word called humanetics. I'll leave you to explain that. I won't explain it, I've just learned the word. But what I've discovered is a lot of Christianity is still based in sort of 16th century thinking. And this is the thing I love.
14th.
14th, yeah. And this is the thing I love about the Uniting Church. And we have great division in the Uniting Church. And we've got an assembly coming up with a motion to permit ministers to marry same-gender people. So it's going to be all over the news. But the thing I like about the Uniting Church is in our constitution, in our basis of faith, it talks about that we have the Bible, we have the Trinity, and we also understand the connection with science, which was, when you think of the Uniting Church coming out in 1977, that's a really interesting statement to say, we do this and we read it alongside with science. And so allow yourself to walk away, allow yourself to find a safe space, and allow yourself to find resources. And what I've found is there's been, in the Christian community, there are some wonderful resources that help you understand the theology that is actually very, very supportive of people. And my favourite sort of gospel story, I think it's in John, is around the man that's born blind. And a lot of Christians who are against this say, well, that's a great story, Jason, because it shows that God can heal everybody, and because you're broken, God can heal you. And what I've learned is Jesus uses something as a door opener. And when I look at that story, that the first thing the apostles do is they argue about was the sin of the parent or the sin of the young man. And Jesus says, we're not going to talk about that. And then later on, it's the parents are brought into the priests or the Pharisees, and we see this model of parents being your child or the church. And again, Jesus is not having any of that. And then eventually, the man who's been healed, the Pharisees throw him out because he got healed on a Sabbath. Jesus swings around at the end of the story and picks him up again. And so much of the story of God can be seen loving us all. And it's having the wisdom to find where those stories are.
I think for me, you've perfectly summed it up. And I would walk away, and I've been barred, like I said, from mosques that do not preach or practice one love for all. But for me, I think it's more personal, is first getting to understand what the Quran says and contextualizing that to people, especially youths, that use the surah, use the phrases in the Quran and do not understand it. Because like you said, it's written thousands and thousands of years ago. So having an imam like Imam Nur that's openly gay to helping us understand works for me. And this is how I'm able to enable, activate dialogues and conversations in Fiji through closed meetings and dialogues, I guess. So yes, agree, walk away. But if you still have that void in your heart, which I had in finding that connectivity, go and search for the answer until you do that.
So I just want to remind you all something, and look, this is a Twitter thing, feed away and post it as much as you want. You all remember the story of Jesus and his ministry. Jesus' ministry was never about rich people, was never about people of faith who exclude other people. Jesus' ministry was with sinners and fornicators and lepers and prostitutes. You understand? So, you know what I mean? Like, if Jesus can hang with those people that are considered to be low life, I'm telling you, like your priest that's sitting in a glass house throwing stones at you and Bible passages to exclude you from your faith, tell him to just suck a dick. Like, seriously. Seriously. I'm telling you now. And you can all tweet that all over the place. Like, that's it. I'm dropping the mic.
Okay. 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 Yes, of course, as people of faith, to come out as LGBT is one thing, but to come out as an LGBT person of faith is another. Coming out in your church community can also have its complications. I want to share my story, but I'm not going to do that. So, anyway, thank you, you three. You're marvelous. Thank you very much. And does anyone want to ask? And I saw a hand somewhere. Or did I just, no? Okay. Okay, great. Clap, clap, yes.
Clap.
And I will segue to the activity tonight.
Thank you, Kakai. Exactly.
Yes, the activity tonight.
I'm so glad you asked me.
Yes.
As we've got the Global Interfaith Network here, tonight we've created space for the Global Interfaith discussion. But we talked a lot earlier this week in a diplomatic roundtable that we had at the Australian Consulate about climate justice and also the relationship of religion. And many of you would be aware in our community, but also globally, the climate change issues, particularly the Pacific, are facing, and Tonga. And the Kingdom of Tonga have been hit very heavily, as has Fiji recently. And so we've been spotlighting and trying